Okay, hey ladies and gentlemen, this is Miss Humbert here, and today we're going to be going over Unit 3, Notes 4. So we're going to be talking about isosceles and equilateral triangles a little bit more in depth and learning some theorems about them. So if two sides of a triangle are congruent, then the opposite angles are those sides are congruent. So what does that mean? That's a lot of mumbo jumbo. So first of all, this is supposed to be the congruent symbol. I don't know why it's like off-kiltered like that. Okay, so then that's saying if the line AC, so if that line segment AC is congruent to BC, okay, then angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. So really you're just going to look at what's sitting directly across from those angles, or from those sides that are congruent. Those angles sitting directly across from those congruent sides are equal to each other. Okay, so what's the converse of that? Well, the converse says if we know that angle 2 is congruent to angle 1, then we can confidently say that the sides sitting across from those angles, i.e. DE and FE, so meaning DE and FE, are also congruent. Oops. It's playing that game, isn't it? Okay, so it's always looking what's across from those angles. Those are the ones that are congruent. So let's kind of put this into perspective. Okay, so we are going to skip that. So this is actually number 1 for you guys. So we want to find PN. Okay, so we know that these two angles are congruent. So then that and that are congruent. So if MN is 11 centimeters, then PN is also 11 centimeters because they're sitting across from each other. So the answer to number 1 is 11 centimeters. So let's take a look at number 2. It wants you to find the value of Z. Well, this angle and the side sitting across from it, and this angle and the side sitting across from it are going to be equal. So that means that 2Z minus 15 is equal to 9. Okay, so now we need to solve this for Z. So I'm going to start by adding 15 to both sides. Okay, so then we get 2Z is equal to 9 plus 15, which is 24. So then, in order to solve this, I need to divide both sides by 2. And then I get that Z is equal to 12. So that's my final answer for number 2. So now let's take a look at the equilateral triangle. Okay, so each angle of an equilateral triangle is going to be 60 degrees. That's just standard. If you know it's an equilateral triangle, then each angle is going to be 60 degrees. So if a triangle is equilateral, if and only if it's equal angular. What does that mean? It can only be equilateral if all the sides all the angles are equal. So let's write this out in kind of more concrete terms. So if angle B is congruent, that's supposed to be a congruent symbol. That is a hot mess right there. So if angle B is congruent to angle A, which is congruent to angle C, then we know that side AC is congruent to side CB or BC, which is congruent to side B. Okay, so that's an equilateral triangle. All of that needs to be true for it to be an equilateral triangle. So take a look at number 4. I know that this is 60 degrees. Okay, I also then know that this angle is the same measure as this angle. So I'm going to call each of those X. Okay, now because this is an isosceles triangle so far from what we know, but since they're the same side, their opposite angles need to be equal to each other. And we know that a triangle adds to 180. So X plus 60 is equal to 180. So then I get that 2X plus 60 is equal to 180. Subtract 60 from both sides, and I know that 2X is equal to 120. Divide that by 2, and I get that each of these measures of angles are 60 degrees. So the measure of angle R is 60 degrees, and the measure of angle P is 60 degrees. So that means that it's an equilateral triangle, okay? So since it's an equilateral triangle, this side also has to have a length of 5 centimeters, okay? So that's our final answer for number 3. Now, taking a look at number 4. So for number 4, we need to figure out what we know. Okay, I know that this side is congruent to this side, which means I know that 6y plus 3 is equal to 8y minus 5. So 6y plus 3, that is a terrible 3, is equal to 8y minus 5, or g apparently. So let's go ahead and subtract 6y from both sides. So then I get that 3 is equal to 2y and then minus 5. So add 5 to both sides and I get 8 is equal to 2y. Divide both sides by 2 and I get that y is equal to 4. So now I've dealt with the sides. So now I need to solve for x. So in order for me to solve for x, I notice that this side is congruent, so this angle, or the side opposite, so this angle has to be congruent to this angle. Okay, but what I also notice is that these two measures of angles are the same size. Okay, so do you see how these two angles are the same? Because they're both 4x minus 8. Well, given the sides that I know, these two angles need to be the same. So that tells me that all 3 angles need to be the same measure. So in order for them to be the same measure, they have to be 60. So that means that 4x minus 8 has to be equal to 60. So then I'm going to add 8 to both sides, and I get 4x is equal to 68. Divide both sides by 4, and I get that x is equal to 17, I'm sorry. X is equal to 17 for number 4. So let's take a look at number 5. So we want to find the values of x and y. So first of all, I know that this angle is congruent to this angle, but also this angle is congruent to that angle. So that means that all 3 of those angles have to be equal to each other. So since they all have to be equal to each other, they all represent 60 degrees. So what I can do to get x is I can just take 2x and set it equal to 60. Divide both sides by 2, and I end up getting that x is equal to 30 degrees. Now let's talk about sides. Since I went through and I figured out that all the angles are 60 degrees, that makes this an equilateral triangle, which means that all of the sides are equal to each other. So 5y minus 5 is also going to be equal to 3. Okay, so then I'm going to go ahead and add 5 to both sides, so then I get that 4y is equal to 8. Divide both sides by 4, and I get that y is equal to 2. So y is equal to 2. That's my answer for number 6. And that concludes your note video for today. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for listening.